So for those of you that don't know Rick, he's obviously very entertaining. He's a great demonstrator. He's going to demonstrate goblets with captured rings and texturing. So I'm going to hand it over to Rick.
Thank you. Thank you. I've never done this demo before, so we'll see how it goes. But I got interested in captured rings. I don't know how long ago. I guess Pete started it. And in fact, some people were asking if this was a holiday ornament for the holiday party this year. This is actually the first two captured rings I ever made. And I would guess, well, it might have a date on it. It does. 4/20/08. So almost 20 years ago. And they stayed on. At the time that I got interested in making captured rings, the thing people were making them for were baby rattles. And I don't make any baby rattles. I'm a little cautious to give a baby rattle to somebody who's got a baby that, you know, if they bust the ring and swallow it or something, the turner's going to be in deep crap. So I would warn you, if you're thinking about making baby rattles, make sure the ring is pretty big and there's no flaws in it so it doesn't break. And the rule of thumb, the old rule of thumb on making rattles or anything for a baby is it's got to be bigger than the ability to fit through the hole on a roll of toilet paper. And if it won't go through there, that's probably not a choking hazard. So I'm gonna go through making a goblet, a complete goblet with one ring, texture the goblet, texture the ring, do chatter work on the bottom, and then clean it up, and then show you some things that I try to do every time I'm turning a piece just for practice. And once we're done with that, I'd say that's going to take an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half, something like that. Then I'll open it up to see if we want to, what else we want to do, because there's a whole bunch of things we can do with rings, multiple rings, off center, turning with rings, intertwined rings, you know, square rings on round pieces, round rings on square pieces. Your imagination will kind of run the gamut. And the texturing, I was making these goblets early this year, started getting back into them in preparation for this once Robin hooked me into doing something. And that texturing has started since then. And then the texturing of the ring started since then. And doing the chatter work on the bottom has really started since then. So it's evolved each time I do more of them. So with that, we will get going. If anybody's got questions, I know there's a lot of questions about some weird looking tools, but we will get to those. Raleigh he's always talking about his tool caddy, and I brought mine, and just so you know, it is named Raleigh. I mean, wherever I go, Raleigh follows me around. I'm trying to teach him stuff, but he's kind of a hard act to follow, but this is my tool caddy. So, it's kind of a pain in the neck, you know, actually. So I've got a piece of, I find my safety glasses. I've got a piece of walnut with a little color in it, and we will just start with it and make a start to finish goblet and see how it goes. I've already got the center marks made, and we will, the worst spot about demoing, everybody who's demoing probably realizes that, is turning on a lathe that is not your lathe at home. It is just, the switch is in the wrong place. I mean, you feel like you're fumbling. So, yeah, but it's still not my switch. It's on my lathe. And what did you mean by that? Take that switch and put it over wherever you like. Thank you.
Tough crowd.
It is. So I will just use a roughing gouge. I'm going to take this down most of the way and then size the tenon on the end of it before we get too far, because it is close to this diameter. Every time I make a cylinder out of a piece of square wood, I try to practice making it an absolute straight cylinder, and do that over and over and over. So I'll put the ruler on it and see if there's light underneath it, and that's pretty straight. But it's something that you can work on every single time, and you get better and better and better at it, and it will help you down the road. This is just a piece that's about 4¼ inches long, so I will have enough for the goblet and a little bit left over to show you what I practice on as far as chatter work. And put a little dovetail on this. And move it to a chuck. The chucks I use are these ones I get from Craft Supply. Raleigh, what are they? Yeah, man, they, for $100, they're a great chuck. Yeah, the link is, in fact, you were a little late. We went through the entire PowerPoint, Greg. Well, it's kind of too bad because I referred to you quite a few times in that PowerPoint. This is a tough crowd. Well, you have to build them this way, but anytime I'm doing goblets, I do it the exact same way. This is going to be the cup end in the stem and in the bottom. If for those pen turners, I think pen turners typically turn pens the exact same way. They get the point at one end and always do them that way. I haven't turned pens in a long time, but that's typically the way I would do it. It's got a little bit of run out, but so here, man, need some. I'm going to drill a hole to start in the end of it. And what I do on this is use a countersink bit, and these don't wobble. If you try to do them with something thin, that bit will wobble. And I just get this going so I can start a drill bit, and then I hollow it from that drill bit, and there's no set rules on how big a drill bit you use. So hollowing is not my favorite thing. So I'll start and I'll just use a 1 inch bit. Go in there, turn the lathe speed down so you're not really cranking, and I'll drill a hole in this just about an inch and a 16th deep, and then mark that, and that'll be my cup. It's a good question. I found that anytime you drill out in something that like a box that somebody's going to look at, especially if they're a wood turner, the bottom of something, a candle holder, they look at it to see if it's been drilled. So then I take some kind of tool and clean it up so you can't tell that I've drilled it. I find that the twist drill is easier to recover and clean up than the Forstner bit is. I've done enough of them that's the reason I do it. And this has got an index, yeah. It was 1 3/4 inches. You probably shouldn't be using your lathe speed any faster than what you do on a drill press. So that's just over an inch. Man, it gets tough to get used to. I have a what is it called? A robust Sweet 16. And I very much like it. I know a couple other people that have robust. And this I'll just hollow out and get rid of all the signs of that. And this is a light I got from Cindy Drozda. It'll stay on. There we go. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Pardon me? Yeah, anything that you got to get in and be able to see. And I just use one of these easy tool carbide tips, just a round tip. I know there's people that put their nose down at the carbide tools, but I use this round one for hollowing, and I use square ones or flat ones for making tenons and mortises on box lids. And that's about all I do with them. I can get in there. Yeah. Tool rest is just a hair high. Pardon me? I'll take this down to about 1/8 of an inch doing this, and then shape it a little bit more so it's they're probably a fat 16th or maybe a little bit more than that. There's no rule on that either. You know, obviously the thinner you make it, more people go ooh and ah, but the more you blow them up too. I've got an air compressor and it's supposedly fairly quiet. And I'm going to do a little bit of sanding, but it should not be a whole bunch. So the bottom has got just a little bit of cleanup to do, but it's and typically a couple of things I'd comment about. Faster you do the hollowing, the better it's going to turn. And I was reading online the other day about the tips that Easy Tool makes, and now they not only make a flat one, but they make a negative rake one. Probably $10 more, whatever. But that is all I use the Easy Tools for. And so I'll sand that and then mark the depth of it, and we'll start seeing if we can't cut some rings and go from there. Typically on sanding, I just use 180, 220, 320, and 400. Is that the numbers? And that's probably an overkill on wood to put oil on. My finish is just oil, but it seems to. And that little bit of run out that we still have will go away when we start shaping the outside of it. Yeah, when I just put it in the chuck, I didn't have it lined up perfectly. And you don't, on something like this, you don't have to worry too much because you do have the chance to get it true from here. And when you cut the blank and it was 4¼ inches, something like that, by 1¾ inches, obviously, if you don't have the two ends exactly parallel, then this is going to wobble too. So you got the chance to take that out. Runouts when you remount something in the lathe and you don't have it true, so it's got a little bit of wobble. Is that the best way to explain it? That's true it back up. It's going to, once this is in the chuck, it's in its final position. So it's going to stay in the chuck until I part the finished product off. So it's after you turn it to round and get your tenon on it. And then when you put it in the chuck, that's when you're going to find that you're going to have a little bit of run out, a little bit of wobble, and you take it right back out. I will true up this end. It doesn't look like it's too bad, but you can hear it. And then I will, where's my depth gauge? I've got a depth gauge I use on this, and it's a short one. And the reason I do that is when you're working on the piece, you mark the bottom of it, and you've got it between the centers, whatever you're doing. If you got a long one, you can't get it in there to measure with it. So I just have one that I dedicated, cut that piece off, and use it. This is just a boy, that's a rubber chucky. And it is just fortunately, wow. They make a whole rubber chucky makes a whole bunch of stuff and they make smaller ones than this. I have got a list that I'll pass around in my one handout. It's got the things that I'm talking about and the things I use where I get them. And so you can find those. I just use that to firm up and hold that in because when we get down to the stem of the goblet, it's going to be an eighth or maybe just under 3/16. And if you start putting much lateral pressure on the head of that, it's going to make a move or wobble. And I've got this marked, so I'm going to mark the bottom of the goblet. I'll use a shorter tool rest so I can get in there. The blade probably needs a little bit of tender, loving care, but look at that. So I've got I don't know if you could see that. Yeah, I've got the bottom of that hole cut or marked. And from here, I'm going to, don't need that anymore. I'm going to turn my first ring. And this is where you'll take that run it out as you start turning here. So what I do here is I go down about and half an inch from that line and start cutting down to form my first, or on this one, my only ring. No, no set guidelines on the ring size, other than I heard, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's our illustrious president, said my rings were a little big the other day when I had a couple of them here. The only the only thing that I do is on one of these, this one, for instance, I try to make the ring thickness the same thickness as the stem of the bottom, and I think it just looks better. But that's just a personal preference. So here I'll now I've already erased that line that I had marked, but it's the same as my tool was, so I can start using it to make sure I've got the bottom safely marked. And here I'll start shaping just a little bit. Gonna be a thin. round over the top of the ring. And I'll back up just a second and talk just about making the rings. This is just what I call a story stick, and it just gives you the idea of how the ring is made. The ring is just outlined, and I'll pass this around, rounded around the top, sanded around the top. Then you start undercutting it with the captured ring tools. You finally free it up. Then you take that diameter down a little bit so it's free flowing. Then you sand the inside of the ring, and then you take it down to a final diameter. Yes. um, they're not bad if you do 2 or 3, but that one goblet that's got 10 rings on, the rings took me 2.5 hours. So they get into each other's way, and I mean it's just not a relaxing afternoon.
One at a time?
Yeah, you got to do them one at a time, but yeah, we can if the interest of that, we can do multiple rings. Now I'll just sand the outside of that ring just a bit, and I'm going to texture it so the sanding job doesn't have to be too complete, because the texturing is going to remove all of the sanding. Anyway, Robin, right now that the top of that goblet is about a 16th, maybe a fat 16th. And I'll take the area around that ring down a little bit more, and I'll start to undercut it. Just a bit more. And I use these captured ring tools that Pete made, and he usually would carry he'd have half a dozen sets of these in his car that he had made whenever he was doing a demo, and if somebody wanted them, he sold them for $20 or whatever, but he always had them. These are the ones that Pete made me, and just made out of Allen wrenches. And I'll pass. These are the ones I've made with a different handle, and the Allen wrench is just a 3/16 inch long handled Allen wrench, and it goes down in the handle a little bit deeper, a little more secure, and just snapped it off. Yeah, these I'll talk about those a little later. I've had that Allen wrench set for, since I made that first set of rings, 18 years. They're pretty easy to sharpen with a Dremel tool. So 2 different sides, you cut in on one side with the one, cut in on the other side with the other. And now we'll take it off and texture the ring. Man.
turn the lid for the goblet because then it becomes a bottle?
No, I haven't. No particular reason. But a goblet, since it's made to drink out of, I think putting a lid on it's kind of counterintuitive. Well,
Take advantage.
I'm not too worried about that, but no travel goblets. No, I'm sure people do. I'll show you the finished product, and you got to get that. That's as far as it'll go. And I don't know whether you'd want to drink at them or not, but gonna need the light. Come on, baby.
Take a 360. Is about the right distance for
Yeah, you got to cut a fair amount of it away, Greg. So I hope that
So is that way that little way?
just strictly the magnet. Yeah. I need an electrical cord. Do we have another one? Okay. I'm going to come back and forth a couple times. So this is just a, yeah, and I've got to plug this in too, don't I? Carving set that, I was inspired by. Who's that guy from New Zealand? Graham Priddle and his partner, Melissa Engler. He used these, and you can use a Dremel tool. You find that the Dremel tool it vibrates a lot. They're kind of loud. They don't run nearly as true as this, and this has got a cam lock in it, so you don't need a tool to take the tool in and out. You just lock it in and it's ready to go. It'll probably turn at 40,000 RPM. And here's the bit you can pass around that I use. It's just a rotary chisel. And I turn this up as fast as it'll go, and I just touch the wood with it. And it is pretty fast. I make boxes that are textured. I brought them here, and people will say, how long does it take you to texture the box? And it's really not all that long. It looks like you got to touch these individually, but the top of this goblet, when I'm done with the ring and get it, freed, I'll come back and do the top of this. And I've timed myself over and over and over, and I can do the top of it in about 6 minutes. So it's not a long process at all. You could. I find it hard to maneuver, so I use the
They are.
yeah.
Those
It
digital lock.
yeah, I can move this, you gotta, yeah, it just drive you. What? I've got that on that list. I'll show you the list. Okay. As soon as I'm done with this section, I'll pull that out and pass it around. There's quite a few things that I've got. Oh, it's a Trent Bosch carving stand. And there's quite a few people that make them now. No. I bought my lathe from Trent. You know, he's demoed here. He belongs to the Northern Club. He is such an energetic, giving guy that once you get involved with someone like that, that's who you need to do business with. Yeah. He is just a good guy. The first time I saw him 20 years ago, the first time I saw Trent Bosch, I just heard Trent Bosch is coming, Trent Bosch this, Trent Bosch that, you know. So I go to his demo and I'm expecting, at that time, 20 years ago, I was expecting somebody my age or maybe 10 years older. And he's a goddamn kid. And I went, holy mackerel. I mean, he really is. Yeah, he's very much so. Yeah. But he's so giving and so enthusiastic. And he's a tool junkie. Yeah.
That's the gate. Yes, so you can get up with the weight and actually see his tool on camera side and see exactly where you're at.
He's got a patent. Well, he had a patent on it. I think the patent's expired.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. So I've textured the ring and I'm going to put it back on here and I'm going to have to move that electrical cord again. I'm going to need the whole thing back there. Yeah. Let me unplug that. Yeah. And if you grab that for me, so I will sand that texturing a bit with a sanding wheel. And these I learned from my mind's a blank. Melissa and him. Who was it? Graham Priddle. If you ever watch their demos on texturing, and they're amazing. This I will turn way down, and this only takes a couple minutes, so I do use the lathe for this, but I will turn this on and let me get this list. You can pass it around. Sure, absolutely. Oh, thank you. This sanding wheel will sand the whiskers, the rough spots off this texturing tool, and you turn it way down. That's all of the no rotor tool. It was running. Yep. And as fast as I can as fast as I can run it. It's probably running, here's one of these. Those sanding wheels come in different grit, and they will remove, if you leave them at a high speed, they will remove quite a bit of wood. So I turn that way down when I'm cleaning up that. It's going around. It is going around. So now I'm going to part that textured captured ring off. Is that better? I'm looking at the one over there. Is that all right? At home, I have lights on both sides, so I've got a lot more light on it. And the ring's free. I just take another parting tool and take this down just a little bit so the ring runs freely on it. And I'll sand the inside of the ring. I'm going to sand a little bit more of the wood so the tape has a little better adherence to it. And I need the scissors and some tape. And now I'm just going to tape that thinner, less wide piece of 220 onto the shaft and wrap it around and sand the inside of that. And if you take your time with the tools and the sanding and everything, you can get this ring pretty round. I don't spend a great deal of time and concern in worrying about whether that is perfect on the inside and the ring is done. Textured, and we'll start cutting the goblet. And what I do here is I tape the ring out of the way. I just got this roll of tape, and finding the end of it will be a challenge. There it is. So I'm just going to take this up out of the way. And now I'm going to take that stem down to from that ring, or just a hair past it, up to the goblet, is about to where I wanted as far as thinness. And I'm okay. And here's where I will put a defining mark kind of on the bottom of that cup, and texture from that defining mark up to the top rim. So I'll just use a 3-point tool to cut a line in there and hopefully not cut through the bottom of it. But it makes a pretty funnel anyway. Well, you got to sand it to, if you don't sand it a little bit, you can even see through the texture that there's a little bit of a wobble, but that's as good, that's as much as I would sand it. Okay, so it goes back over to the other spot again.
Thank you for the cookies.
Raleigh. You know, he's done that so often, he's had tool trays named after him.
Avoid the embarrassment, you put a cake over it.
Yeah. Let's see if I can do this without a light.
We expect all of us.
Did you see the tools? The gal next. Someplace they did not get around. Well, start. Yep. So here I'll just, the same thing, the tool's running. Hmm? Oh,
One accommodation, a quarter inch. And the other one, the eighth and 32nd.
this will hold two. This machine, I think, was 300. So it's not, they're not cheap. Yeah.
No, you do our box, air pop. And it sits in a box, I need to get that out again. It runs at 500,000.
Oh.
Yeah, donate it. But donate it, not even take off.
Yeah.
Bring it to the auction. You can, right, I think about it, it's like, years. It was a show.
You know, I run into, when you see somebody like, Priddle, Graham Priddle and his partner, and you see the work they do, and they have all kinds of tools, and they recommend one. I'm the kind of guy that goes, they've done a hell of a lot more research, and why would I research that again? I just get what they tell me to. And ever so often you make a mistake because you find out that the person that may not had any idea what they were doing, but they're both pretty good.
Did you ever make a Woodturner battery charger?
No. And I haven't done the electrocution of the wood, whatever that stuff is that AAW come out and warned about not doing it. It just didn't interest me. It's kind of,
Regularly arts and crafts. There's a restaurant up in, I had one car full of birds and wings. And one of the owners, you look at all of their tables have little birds on the legs. And she almost killed herself doing. It's a lot like that.
yes, it is.
They landed that to finish.
Well, the guy that's done quite a bit of it in our club is Dave Hawley. And he seems to have gotten through it. Well, that's exactly right. Yeah. I do this in 3 rows. I just find that I can control a tool when I get into a groove right there. And I remember Doug Schneider talking about how he does the patterns on his basket weave illusions, and he does a section at a time. He said mainly for his sanity, because if you start in on and you got to go all the way around, you go, oh my God. No.
That's one thing I have done. That's 15.
Both Doug Schneider and Graham Priddle said they use lazy boy recliners to, do their work, and they sit back in there, and I'm going, if I had this thing in the house and my wife came in and there's sawdust flying, I have no idea. Yeah, I think he is. Both of them are. But I went, yeah, that'd go over big. And I think you're right, but I mean, how would you like a lazy boy recliner that's had 18 years of dust in it? I mean, you pull it up and it goes like that, and it says cloud.
Here.
Well,
It makes the mice more comfortable. I just passed you before you do that.
one of the reasons it's kind of nice to do an entire project like this, even though it's quite boring, is it gives you a heck of a lot better feel for the length of time it takes to do that. So I didn't time myself, but with talking and everything, it was under 10 minutes. And again, you got a lot of fuzz on this that will come right off when we put it back on the lathe and use that brush. The chuck, it comes from Craft Supply. Yeah.
There's no room, Bill, and then Rob.
We didn't really go that way to the room. Like, where are you gonna put that?
I don't have to get
So I turn this, I got the brush in here and I turn it way down. And there's no dial on that. So you just kind of got to get used to where you're. Did you say you were going to shoot those, Raleigh? Okay. Um, 73. And I'll take it out. Actually shut it down and do it by hand to see if there's any fuzz sticking out. I think this one's 80. And I just look at it to see if there's any obvious ones. On the lathe at home, the low speed is 40, I think. And that's kind of what I've gotten used to. I don't think that that's a magic number. So now we'll finish up cutting the stem and then do some chatter work on the bottom.
Sanding. Sell it, Woodturners supply, they sell these, I think it's like a mantle with the essentially Scott Brett material on, but they're pretty expensive and, Linda Perkins here just turns out to, you can get them on Amazon. I hate to give them all money, Jeff Bezos, send his girlfriend to space, but,
His wife, no. And I mean, she loves him. She's not in it for anything else.
About $20. And they just throw them away with them.
Yeah. These, this was again something that Graham was using and liking. So I'm going that, I can take my idle time and do something else with it. Now I know if Cindy was doing this, she would use a different tool on this, shaft of the, I don't know what she'd use, but I just use a parting tool. There's not a lot of room to get a tool in there to. Skew. I don't have, yeah. I have no idea, but I think I did. Yeah, on the tall goblet, did I use a parting tool to make the stem? And I think I did, but I couldn't swear by it. Again, you can do this with the ring free, but it is annoying. And Greg, we were talking last week about chatter tool, and I'll give you some thoughts about using the chatter tool. When I'm coming in on this, my goblets here with the stem coming out and the rings, here. And the base is going to be like that. And this would be a little bit shorter, but the reason I have the base, this at such kind of a crazy angle instead of coming up like this, is that when I do the chatter work on this, I'm going to come straight back in with a parting tool and cut some of the chatter work away. And a lot of times you can't get this tool in at a right angle. You're going to bump into the bottom of the cup. So that's why it's kind of a high instead of a flat base on that goblet. I didn't hear you, Greg. No, the chatter is going to work best on end grain, but that's got enough end grain that it's going to be fine. Yep. When we get to this chatter work, I'll talk a little bit about some guidelines. On chatter work, typically the harder the wood, the more dense the wood, the closer the grain is, the chatter tool is probably going to work better. When you start getting into a softer grain with a wider grain depth or ring, slower growth, you got to move the chatter tool faster so it's on the wood less, because if it stays on the wood and it repeats that chatter, the softness of the wood, it'll just beat that wood down to nothing. When you got a good hardwood, you can take the tool down pretty slow. When you got a softer wood, you're going to move the tool pretty fast. So I'll give you a couple things to think about. Walnut's not a particularly hard wood. So I will lower the tool rest substantially, do all the things that are opposite what you think. Tool rest is quite away from the work. You lower it, and the chatter tool, has got a whole bunch of room, so it vibrates instead of what you normally want, the tool close, the tool rest close, and no vibration. I've got quite a bit of room here still, on this base. So if this first chatter doesn't work, I can cut it away and I've got room to try it 2 or 3 times. Well, it's the kind of tool. This tool's got a real thin blade, and when you put it against the wood 1.5 inches away off a tool rest, it bounces. It chatters. The worst noise the tool makes, usually the best chatter you have. And it's counterintuitive. You would think that if you turn the lathe on slow, the chatter work would be bigger, more pronounced, and if you turned it fast, it would be finer, and it's just the opposite. The faster you go, the bigger the chatter is, because the tool bounces and the lathe moves further before the chatter hits the wood again. So it's you got to practice it and practice it and practice it, but we'll see if I'm lucky at all. But you turn the lathe up pretty high, and you just come up and bring it down in one move. You don't go back and forth. Harder, tighter grain, you can take it slow. Softer, you move it fairly fast. That sounded okay. And it beat up the wood. I didn't go fast enough, so it was a purchased tool, and I have no idea. Yeah, it's just some kind of. You know, was yours bent? Yeah. And then it's probably from Kip. I couldn't remember where I got it. So I'll cut this away and do it again.
Why did it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was, maybe the lathe was too fast. And if the spindle gouge is sharp and doing its thing, you shouldn't have to sand that surface again. That should be better than if you sanded it with whatever. So we'll just try it again. What I'm going to do is slow the lathe down a little bit and maybe move the tool a little faster and see what. You start about here and you move down. Okay. Oh no, it's just, whatever point of the radius is there, it's just a teeny portion, a 64th, or, I'd say a point, but it isn't. Yeah. Yeah, you saw the mistake I made, and so I slowed the lathe down. That still is kind of crappy. Let's try to finish it and do a couple things and see how it comes out. That's a technical term. I don't. Oh, well, I'm not quite there. I'm not quite there. Good point. Yep.
Montana.
Well,
That's not an A.
I just kind of cut some in there looking a little better when I did that. And here's where I come into a 90-degree and cut that second section from the outside totally out. So then it looks like I did something really tricky with that chattering tool. Yes. And then you can color them.
Wow, so much, and it's like, for something that's really a fairly simple procedure. Get a lot of wow.
I wanted to do that outside just to.
Wow. Well, cause when we're on top, I don't think the cost, the salary. You get often with the phone. So you see like spider.
That's not bad. Anytime you know that hard maple that we get from Shack, it's absolutely perfect for this. And the chatterwork comes out 90% of the time the first time you go across it. Yeah. Now at this point, I'm going to sand this outside a little bit and then part it off, but I want to point something out to you that Raleigh was getting into. This piece that's on the end here that's still in the chuck, it's 5/8 of an inch of material there. That's still going to be there, and I will use it to practice more chatter work on every single one of these I make. There's a box. Raleigh, if you want to throw that box around. I do these on every one. And I keep them, my grandkids take them home and do stuff with them. But if you've got some pretty good wood and you do that with them, you can use those for inserts on a box. You know, if you've got a real figured dark box, you could use a maple one with chatter work on the top, or if you've got a real plain box, you could do something darker. So I practice chatter work probably 3 times on a project like this, every single time. And that is certainly one of the keys on getting better at chatter work, is that poker chips. The gal across the street from me has just moved in, and she's an artist. She does something, I don't know what she does, but it's wacky to me. But she says, "Oh my God, can I have these?" And I said, "Sure. What are you going to do with them?" She says, "I'm going to make buttons for coats." And I went, "Okay, none of them are going to match, but I still have them all." She didn't come over and get any, so I'm expecting to see one of my coats with a one tux. I'm hoping my days of wearing jacket and ties are over, and a tux is absolutely out the window.
Like that.
There ain't anybody marrying them girls. Ain't gonna happen.
That's.
I'm afraid they've probably oof. The 12-year-old's got a new boyfriend. His name is Boston. I've never heard of Boston before, and all 3 kids, 14, 12, and 8, have other kids in each one of their classes named Boston. Yeah, I was. So I'm looking, there's a 12-year-old in Lubbock, Texas named Boston that I'm watching really close. So now we'll just part this off. Now it's all finished off the lathe. And I was talking to Raleigh several months ago about when you use a parting tool to cut something off, the finish is usually very ripped. And how do you clean that up? It's going to be difficult to put this in a jam chuck and use, say, a spindle gouge to clean that up because you got such a thin stem there. Unless you built something big, and now you're talking about the jam chuck is 5 times the length of the project. So I've been playing around with it. So I switched to this, and I use this chisel, and I just kind of clean this up with it. And the nice thing about this versus one of these tools like have the steel ball, these are really grabby, and you know, they jerk things out of your hand. This thing isn't grabby at all. I mean, it can pull things, but I will just start towards the outside of this bottom and start making swirls in it to just kind of clean up that bottom. And it's got no.
Have you ever made big ones, like to the capacity that your lathe will handle?
No. You mean goblets? No,
Yeah, something that'll hold a right up funny or.
yes,
Extreme.
with a textured cap.
That tall. Friend collects rolling pins, has them all over her house, so I got it. And already given her smallest one, so that I.
Is your rolling pin straight or do you
Has all over her wall. You can tell me about it.
And then I just kind of sand that a bit. And that's the lathe work. And then I'll put the oil on it. And it's walnut oil. Mahoney's walnut oil, and it for these, you know, they're small projects that are pretty much giveaways. As I practiced over the last couple of months, I had a box of that my youngest granddaughter's big into her kitchen, and so she's got plates and, you know, plastic asparagus and hot dogs and I don't know what all in there, but it, Papa, sit down, we're going to have salad. And so you sit down. So I gave her a box with 8 goblets in it. And her mother's going, oh, now you're making my daughter a wino. I hope she's not drinking it, but it, she was absolutely thrilled to have 8 of these wooden goblets. So just a teeny bit of walnut oil all around. And the wood, quite frankly, sucks up the oil pretty fast. Might be.
Actually, no, it's heat treated, Mahoney's is heat
Oh.
treated, and all of the, actually, most of the toxins that bother people are either in the nuts or in the actual tree. But the
walnut.
the walnut oil is not,
You know, I would think that maybe the wood would be a bigger problem than the walnut oil. I have not seen anybody ever have a reaction to walnut, but Ron Ainge has had people in a shop at his house and turned walnut, and you know, they have to get him out of the room and call paramedics to. I mean,
Also had affected dog,
yeah,
super lethargic and couldn't even get on the couch. This was not an old dog.
and the
Laid in-
shavings,
It laid in the shavings in my shop and we gave the dog a nice bath and brought it right back. But yeah, you gotta watch.
Wow.
the dogs
and
in
you
the
don't
shop.
put walnut shavings around a horse, will actually, injure their hooves.
yeah, they get, these horse people get real particular about the wood that they use for bedding. Well, you know,
But walnut is, you can't have them.
yeah,
Like, ruin them.
I'm
So do you also use that same oil, let's say if it was a maple?
Yep. use it on everything. And you just get it and it'll soak, and you know, 2 months later, if the thing's looking kind of dry, you just put another coat on it. And all you can you now what do you want me to? Is that okay? I'll here's a couple of pieces of paper towels if it gets on your hand or you want to wipe. Anybody needs it. Something that you know, that's was an hour and a half with a lot of talking. They'll take me at home. I do them at a little bit different stages. I'll have the blanks all set up and drilled, and then I can put them on, and they take about 45 minutes. I don't worry too much about them. They're giveaways. So that's the basic textured goblet with a textured ring and a chatterwork bottom and a little finish on the bottom. Let me back up and show you what I do with this piece that's still on the lathe, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Greg, again, that kind of addresses some of the things you asked about, is take it down again. And I just smooth that up. And you know, you're not going to sand it again. If your spindle gouge is doing what it's supposed to, that finish should be pretty good. And just practice again on that, and came out way better than the bottom of the goblet, but it's also direct in grain as opposed to that angle on it. So on every one of these, I'll go through that same. Yeah. So I just divide this up again.
How far?
I'll pass the chatter tool around.
Yeah.
Yep, there's some things you can do.
Can I get we turn that around?
That's kind of crappy. So I would do that. I didn't part that off, but I do that on all the pieces that are left on my chuck. I have a spiraling tool someplace hidden even better than that wobble chuck was hidden. And I have no idea where it is. Do you? I just, I was kind of like Greg. I tried it one time and I didn't have any instructions and I got, well, this is, threw it away. So past that, I'm open. If somebody wants to see something or do it again, I'm not going to do the whole thing again.
Ring inside a ring.
Yeah.
2 rings.
Well, the ones for the concentric.
Did anybody bring any wood?
Stop. Yeah.
Oh, I might have brought some.
Someone had said, we the, training from the lady and the putting together as a chain.
Intertwined? Well, I can do that on the lathe. Let's try a couple rings and then we'll talk about those intertwined rings because I get those intertwined questions quite a bit. It's interesting without this in the lathe. Well, I don't know. Maybe I've been drinking. If you want. Let's try a couple of rings and then we'll go to those intertwined. Because that is the question I got most at the start was what are those weird looking tools for up there? And I'll show you. Where do I get what? I think that came from Kip Christensen out of Utah. But I could not remember where I got it and I looked online and I couldn't see that he was making that anymore. That particular one? I didn't see it, so maybe I just didn't know where I was looking. Yeah. So we'll do a couple of rings. Hopefully quick.
Higher than center.
It's almost dead even. I got a flat spot in there.
You do that every time.
No, I try to do the flat every time, but most of the time I look and can tell whether it's going to be good or not because I've done it quite a bit. But you know, you should get to where that is a natural. I'm always amazed at, you know, somebody said practice makes perfect. Practice makes permanent, and it can be permanently perfect or permanently crappy. Um, but it does make it permanent. So we'll just do a obviously we're not putting this in a chuck. I'm not going to sand these. We'll just round them up a little bit. Trying to make sure that's out of the way. There you go. Is that okay? Well, I'm not even going to sand the inside of those. Just for the. This is where these things start driving you nuts. when you're using these Allen wrench tools, you make sure that that tip is pointed down, no more than horizontal. Because if you have it pointed up and go into the wood, it's going to really grab it. So most of the time it's down at, I don't know how many degrees, but it's pointing down. The if you look at the tool, the flat spot always goes on top. The bottom is sharp. Yep. So this would go in from the right side because the flat's on and it's pointing towards the left. Does that make sense? Yeah, you can sharpen it. You can sharpen it just with the top. You can use a hone all the way around it, or you can use that little Dremel attachment that's just that sanding disc, maybe 1/2 inch in diameter or 3/8, and hone it up with that pretty quick too. You could. And these dancing around, if there's only a couple of them, is not bad. But when you get 5 or 6, they start really getting in your way. The intertwine tools, you would get a goblet and you'd have 2 rings on it, and they're not intertwined. So you get it to this point. And I'd like to say it's magic. And Kim and I have had this discussion one night, and he looked at me like I normally look, like I may be crazy. Because I told him they're intertwined. So it's like this. And I said, the ring on top is done. And the ring on top, there's no ring on top. They're intertwined. I said the ring on top is done when the lathe is in forward. And then you put the lathe in reverse and you do the bottom one. And he looked at me and he's kind of nodding his head, but you can see inside his head's shaking no. And Kim commented. So I finally started smiling and he realized, yeah. So you have to bust one of these rings and then glue it. And that seems like a really simple thing. But if you've got fingers the size of Andy's over there, you may not be able to get in there and bust one of these really easily. Yep. So you risk a couple things. You risk, first of all, busting a ring in about 4 pieces. And one of the pieces is an 1/8 inch long, and it goes down there. Good luck. That's the first thing. Or you bust both the rings, or you bust the ring and the stem of the goblet. So it's a no-win situation. So what you do is you turn one, and then you take another piece and another piece of wood that's identical to it. Maybe it's from the same piece of board or whatever. And so the color is going to be about the same or exactly the same. And you turn an extra ring on a piece like, kind of like I just did. And I've got 2 rings on here. And they're going to be about the same diameter. I've done this in advance. And you just cut this ring away. And you've got the second ring, and you bust this ring. And you do it with your carpet grabbers. So you put the ring in halfway, and you put the ring in the other half, and it's only going to bust at that joint.
Wow.
Those cost me, I think, $5.99 each on Jeff Bezos' wife got those for me. Yeah, just break it. It's in grain, it's along the grain the whole way. So it doesn't matter where you break it. But now I've got 2 pieces, however they come off. And then you glue it back in with intertwining it. That's the key, is busting this in half, not in 3 pieces. Where's my, got another one. Okay, here. So I've got this, I would take, and it's kind of a jam chuck, and I'd put it in this. So I don't have to hold anything more than normal. Then I have to hold it in, glue the pieces. I use tight bond and use a minimal amount, and I just hold it with my fingers for about 2 minutes, and that's all you need. And then walk away from it for 4 or 5 hours, or maybe overnight, and then come back and clean it up, sand, and then finish it with oil. So it's no more mystical than that. My dad had pliers that he made in this shop when I was a kid, and they had that flat head on them about 3 inches wide that he used to hold like pieces of steel and for grinding them or whatever. And he made those, and of course I didn't keep them, and I can't find any. So as I'm looking for something to hold these, that showed up, and that's what I bought those for. Those are carpet stretchers. So, a couple keys, busting the ring, making an extra ring so you can get it out of that, bust it exactly in half with some kind of tool, and then have a way that the only thing you're holding, and obviously this is secure, is those two rings. And, and after 2 minutes, you can just let that drop and it'll sit there. And you go from there. So there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with intertwined rings, and square ones, on round pieces. So you just kind of let your imagination go crazy. Here's the one for my granddaughter. She said she wanted a dark piece of wood with a white ring, and I told her that was impossible. Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm watching him like a hawk. And then, the other ones you just make out of different kind of wood. You can, although these, when they're on the lathe, are like a propeller, and you got to watch your fingers. So, I've probably done a dozen. Oh, just 2. Yeah. But you see, and this is something that you might give a wedding couple, as maybe with their name on it or something like that as a wedding present. anniversary present, 50th anniversary present, something like that. You see them with a couple goblets standing up and maybe 3 rings joined, so they're freestanding, but there's rings across there. I've seen quite a few different ideas. But you know, it's like anything. I mean, we all have the same kind of disease. You start turning the bowl and then you realize you can angle it a little bit and paint it. I mean, Raleigh starts painting stuff, and I mean, yeah, I'm not a painter. So, and the off center, which just like you did last week, but you find the middle and, well, I can't, these, this is all wood from Shack and just scraps glued up. When you give this to someone that is not a wood turner and they think about the ring, then they think, well, you obviously glued that ring together to get it on there. That's not the case, but I kind of like these too. I mean, for just a little different thought. And then there's 2 that have the texturing just going part way up the base instead of all the way. How many people are here? 30? Well, I'm practicing. I made more goblets, and actually I've got 30 in here. So they're all the same and they're all different. Please help yourself to one. And I've made little ones. You know, the guy who kind of got me into starting the goblets was 9 Fingers, and we were making tops, and we would cut off that 3/8 inch piece of dowel that was about 3/4 of an inch long, and we started turning goblets out of those, and then it went on and on.
Yes, much better.
Now, don't pick through them all, Greg. Just take what's. No, none of them are signed. For a project this length, they're not signed, so they're not worth anything. If they want, you know, if you put Raleigh's name on, I'm sure they'd be worth quite a bit of money. If the box goes around, John, just take one at the top. I should have started them over on this side of the room. I'm sorry. I apologize. If we run out and you didn't get one, let me know and I'll make you one. Well, I didn't have a good PowerPoint presentation, so. Who's next?
Gotta be an animated PowerPoint.
An animated.
Well, you already left somebody.
The next one is Robin Luther doing something hot.
Oh, so that'll be 30 of those. Tell your friends, man, 40, 50 people show up.
We haven't had a time.
You shut it off. Yeah.
That's fine.